The MINI Superleggera is the most beautiful concept that's ever come out of MINI. Released in 2014, it harkened to a past while pointing to the future. It was restrained yet emotional, minimal yet full of details. And as time has proven, it's completely unforgettable. This is the story of how MINI created something that is so exceptional that we, over 10 years later, are still talking about it and pining for it to come out. When the MINI Superleggera concept car debuted at Ville d'Este, this was, of course, 2014, it looked almost too perfect to be real. A minimalist hand-formed sculpture that captured MINI's spirit while stripping away much of the ornamentation that we had seen in modern MINIs up to that point. If you remember, there's a lot of sort of retro-futuristic elements and little moments within MINIs that really began when the new MINI was launched. But the Superleggera imagined a completely different future for MINI, and it wasn't just a styling or design exercise. This is the amazing thing. This was a fully functioning prototype, hand-built over nearly a year, with engineering as beautiful as its design. And this is the story of how MINI not only designed, but actually built the most beautiful car it's ever made. The Superleggera was the result of a rare collaboration between MINI Design in Munich, at the time led by Anders Warming, and Touring Superleggera, the legendary Milanese coach builder whose name literally means superlight.
The original idea of the MINI Superleggera vision was to create a car of utmost beauty, but at the same time look far into the future as far as advanced design goes.
Starting from a sketch, the translation to a 3D form is essential.
Touring built it the old school way. Hand-shaped aluminum panels wrapped around a tubular space frame, using the same techniques they once used for Aston Martins and Maseratis.
These shapes are created by hand, created by master craftsmen and women.
Ciao Alberto. Ciao Louis.
Each curve, every joint, every surface was formed by hand. The result was light, perfectly portioned, and crafted in a way that modern manufacturing could really never replicate.
An important thing about Touring Superleggera is the fact that all our cars are made by hand in aluminium.
And we absolutely love this part of the process. In this process, what was first an idea becomes reality, translates into a three-dimensional shape.
MINI provided the overarching design and vision. Touring's artisans turned those sketches into metal. This wasn't a modified production shell, and this is where it's interesting. It was a completely bespoke chassis and body engineered from the ground up. But before that final aluminum masterpiece came to life, MINI actually built a production intent version based on the F56 UKL chassis. That car was used to find the proportion, stance, and the design details, perfecting those short overhangs and that beautiful fin down the tail. Engineers even used it to fine-tune the seating positions, surfacing, and really getting the thing dialed in perfectly before handing it off to Touring. Once the proportions were locked in, Touring turned the design into a fully formed and hand-built aluminum car, and it became something, of course, as we see today, incredibly special. Inside MINI and BMW, enthusiasm for the Superleggera was really enormous. Designers, engineers, and executives all wanted to build it, and this is the amazing thing here. This car started to create something from nothing. This was just an idea. There was no idea behind the initial concept, but because the reaction was such rapturous applause and everybody was so excited about it, the engineers, the designers, and the executives started to realize they had something here. There were serious talks about creating a low-volume production version, and MINI explored how it might work with the UKL platform that underpinned the Cooper and the Countryman that were just coming out at the time. That version would have been, of course, front-wheel drive and possibly with a combustion engine, of course, like the B48. There were feasibility studies done, cost models were created, clay revisions were reportedly also built. But there was another version that MINI was also considering, and this would have been true to the original concept. It likely would have been electric, it would have been hand-built, and fully built, of course, at Touring out of aluminum. And MINI recognized that this car would have cost well over $150,000, which is incredible money for a MINI, of course. But there was such enthusiasm for this car that they thought it might just serve as this incredible halo model built in extremely limited quantities that could really be powerful for the brand. Still, they looked at this math and it just didn't make sense. And of course, switching to steel and using cheaper methods would have really ruined the concept. And then naturally taking it to Oxford and having it built on the F56 platform would have ruined its proportions. And so Mini could have built it, but they held back because they felt that ultimately there was no clear path that would have achieved what we see today in the Superleggera, would have really fulfilled the concept. But the idea, of course, never died. The Superleggera, in a lot of ways, has lived on inside Mini's design ethos as it stands today. You know, it's been a North Star for the brand for over a decade now. And its clean surfacing, its simplicity, you know, all of these little elements that Mini has created, if you stand back and think about it, it has really influenced what we see today in the J01 Cooper specifically. Some of those clean, minimal lines. I think it's something that's very clear that Mini has moved towards since this time period, and you see it really beginning with the Superleggera. Underneath it all, the Superleggera wasn't just beautiful, it was technically fascinating. What's very interesting here is how they built this car. It was designed to house a rear-wheel drive electric powertrain, something Mini had never done before. Power came from an early version of the BMW i3 drivetrain. This is before it got a little bit more power. And that rear-mounted electric motor with about 170 horsepower would have motivated this car pretty well. That setup made it, as we've been told by people inside, lively, balanced, and of course, totally quiet. BMW's I division engineers worked to actually refine this and more or less bring it together with Touring to fit the system into this one-off frame. Every connection, every mount, every wire, it was all hand-built. And, you know, when you think about it, it shouldn't have worked, but it did. The finished car was tested around Munich and later driven at BMW's private test track, so we're told. And the shorter, wider, lower design really, in our eyes, when we look at it driving, it just looked fantastic. And it looked probably how it would have driven, which is just immediate and so satisfying. Inside Mini design, the Superleggera became a symbol of what could happen when design led engineering. Even though it never reached production, the DNA lives on today, as I mentioned. And I think it's really important to note that concept cars, even if they're not built, they do influence brands positively. And I think the Superleggera is absolutely a great example of that. It really reminded everyone that Mini could move beyond retro without losing its soul. And underneath that sculpted aluminum body sat a true electric Mini Roadster, a car that showed what happens when imagination comes first and practicality comes second. More than 10 years later, it still stands as Mini's most beautiful creation, not just for how it looked, but for what it represented. A moment when design, craftsmanship, and courage came together, and Mini built something truly timeless.
We're extremely proud of this one-off car, the MINI Superleggera Vision. This is for us a car that embodies British heritage
and Italian style.
If you like this video, please give it a like, and as always, subscribe for more. We have a lot more videos coming, and of course, a lot more articles on MotoringFile.com.